Hello, my name is Rafi, and I will be the first person to begin with this presentation from Group 3 entitled Oil Palm Expansion in Malaysia, a Decade of Landscape Changes. Uh, these are the group members from Group 3, and this will be the contents of the presentation today. So to begin with, introduction. Malaysia is the second largest oil palm production in the world after Indonesia, according to the data from Oil World June 2016 database, with 19.9 million tons produced and exported. It contributes around 32% from the whole production in the world. Malaysia began its era of oil palm plantation in the early 1970s. Nearly all the oil palms are from Tenera species, which is a crossbreed from Piscifera species and Dura species, which gain benefits from the shell to protect the fruit in the middle and with a big amount of the flesh inside. With the high demand from the world, the oil palm must have a big quantity. Thus, expansion of oil palm is needed, meaning the urge to convert forests to oil palm plantation are happening. This drastic land conversion contribute to numerous environmental effects, such as greenhouse gas emission and deforestation, to name a few. So, laws are needed to be revised and will be discussed whether the current law are relevant or not. For the next part is the methodology. Uh, for our discussion, the methods that we use, to be more specific, which is the data that we use for our discussion, we collected from various sources such as government reports, scientific articles, domestic and also international data that we have obtained, which is the current data that is relevant today, which is we choose to have starting from year 2005 until 2014.
In the first figure, it shows the planted area of Malaysian oil palm expanded from 1960 to 2016. Since this study only looks at data from 2005 to 2014, the amount of data is continually growing. According to the graph, there is a graph in oil palm output beginning with Peninsular Malaysia and then moving on to Sabah and Sarawak. Thus, over the last few decades, demands for oil palm output has increased dramatically. Next, the data shows some variation in the three areas of Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, and Indonesia. Since this study only focused on Malaysia, total net annual emission from oil palm and land use increased from 33 teragram carbon dioxide per year to 40 teragram carbon dioxide per year to 57 teragram carbon dioxide per year.
The first topic of discussion is the expansion of oil palm plantation. Oil palm plantation expansion has resulted in some negative environmental effects such as deforestation, soil erosion, water pollution, and carbon emission. The unceasing growth of this expansion has caused major concern, which led the European Union to revise the Renewable Energy Directive, as the use of palm oil was banned in December 2018 due to its extensive deforestation. However, there has been much debate about whether oil palm expansion is the primary cause of deforestation. For example, Gunnarsson et al. 2013 presented a contrasting viewpoint in which he challenged that idea. Although there are still ongoing different and contrasting assumptions regarding oil palm plantation being the biggest reason for deforestation, it is undeniable that the palm oil industry has indeed contributed to deforestation. Next, Brendan will present the law in Malaysia that deal with this matter.
Now I will continue our presentation. Laws are very crucial in countering a big industry like oil palm in order to set the limit for the plantation. Here we can see two acts which are Protection of Wildlife Act 1972 and National Forestry Act 1984. On the right is National Forestry Policy 1992, which is a policy. To further more elaborate on the Act, in Malaysia, the Protection of Wildlife Act 1972 and National Forestry Act 1984 had been enforced to protect species as well as reducing the impacts to the environment. The clearance or forest for large-scale plantation is governed by under multiple laws. In Peninsular Malaysia, Act 313, which is from the National Forestry Act 1984, is used in purpose of administration, management, and conservation of the forest and forestry development within state of Malaysia. All clearance of the forest for plantation needs a license to be issued under this act. National Forestry Policy 1992 is policy used in limiting the area for oil palm cultivation at 6 million hectares. Although this act was established to give justice to the effort of conserving forests from deforestation by oil palm plantation expansion and timber production, there is still a loophole in it. According to Tong 2021, a blind spot in Malaysia policy had arisen a deforestation risk as the state government can issue forest clearance permit without disclosing their intention in clearing the forest. Due to the lack of proper procedure, this led to a confusing situation when one company started an oil palm project at a clear area which is initially for other reasons. Despite the existence of the Act, it is difficult in enforcing legal action towards the company due to this loophole. On those legal bases, permanent reserve forests (PRF) had also been established with more than 50% of Malaysia land reserved for conservation, while in contrast, 23.95% of Malaysian land bank is used for agriculture development. These strict regulations are used in observing the expansion of oil palm while keeping a balance between economic development and the nation's biodiversity. Thank you. I will let the other presenter proceed our presentation.
Okay, so from this figure, we could see that the emission sources change throughout time. In 2013, there are 53% emissions from the pit oxidation, and in between the year of 1990 to 2000, 60% of the whole emissions from land use underwent changes. And pit fire emissions change throughout three time periods, reflecting variations in pit soil land use. And in this figure, total emissions are predicted to vary by area and time since it involved three different regions. Based on this, Peninsular Malaysia land use change rates decline and palm oil plantations in pit soil grow more and more. This is because oxidation of pit is the main source of emissions. On the Malaysian Peninsula, emissions remain constant due to limited land use changes. Meanwhile, Sabah emission profiles are dominated by LEC surface carbon, and Sarawak emission profiles change over time, which AGC was initially dominated by LUC. But this type of soil plantation expanded as the pit oxidation increased. As a result, a strong regulatory and legal framework for regulating and controlling carbon emissions from oil palm plantations is still required based on figure 4. So we will I will leave the next part to our next presenter. Thank you.
Environmental Quality Act, also known as EQA 1974, is a legislation which is related to prevention, abatement, control of pollution, and enhancement of the environment. Section 29A of EQA 1974 forbids open burning activities through establishing the statutory duty to put out fires in Malaysia. Despite the legislation, open burning cases continue to prevail. As an example, around 76 cases of open burning charges were criminally charged from the year 2011 to 2016, many involving palm oil plantation enterprises. Fine of not more than RM500,000 or not more than 5 years jail time or both for those who violate or do not comply with the rules established for the open burning will be given. Besides that, deforestation, peatland exploitation, and biomass burning are some of the anthropogenic activities associated with the oil palm sector that causes carbon dioxide emission. High requests from importer countries consequently cause yearly increases from biofuel and vegetable oil, resulting in forest and peat swamp in Malaysia to be converted into oil palm plantation. Thus, this legislation is unable to manage carbon emission in palm oil production. This can be seen as an example in Malaysia's carbon emission, which has significantly increased by plus 235.6% between the year 1990 and 2005. That's all. I will ask the next person, who is Amina, to conclude the last part.
To conclude, there are three main parts that are highlighted in this study, which are the rate of oil palm plantation expansion in Malaysia, the environmental impact from the expansion, and the existing legislation that can be applied in regulating oil palm expansion in Malaysia. Due to these environmental issues caused by oil palm plantation, Malaysian palm oil is strictly regulated with several legislation and policy. We had focused on two laws, which are National Forestry Act 1984 and Environmental Quality Act 1974 in this study. So, are these two laws relevant in regulating this issue? From our study, it is proven that it is not relevant. This is because, although the legislation has already been enforced, the data of the oil palm plantation and the carbon dioxide emission continue to increase, which is also related to the conversion of wooded area and peatland regions for oil palm plantation. Thus, the legislation along with related enforcement needed to re-evaluate. That's all from me. Thank you.